The bridge of the UES Goliath hummed with quiet efficiency as Captain Jake Morrison watched the stars through the massive viewport. The ship had been humanity's greatest achievement, stretching over 3 kilometers from bow to stern and packed with technology that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Morrison had been handpicked to command this vessel, not just for his tactical brilliance but for his ability to make split-second decisions under pressure. Dr. Lisa Warren looked up from her science station, her brow furrowed with concern. The experimental jump drive test had not gone according to plan, and the star patterns visible through the viewport were completely unfamiliar. She had been running calculations for the past hour, trying to determine their location, but the results seemed impossible. According to her instruments, they were over 400 light-years from Earth, far beyond any previous human exploration. Commander Ryan Blake stood at the tactical station, his hands moving across the holographic controls as he ran diagnostics on the ship's weapon systems. The Goliath was armed with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created, including gravity manipulation cannons and adaptive plasma arrays. Every system showed green, but Blake couldn't shake the feeling that they might need those weapons sooner than expected. The jump drive had been experimental, designed to push the boundaries of human faster-than-light travel. The test was supposed to move them only a few light-years from Earth, allowing the engineers to study the effects of the new technology in a controlled environment. Instead, they had somehow been transported hundreds of light-years into completely unknown space. Morrison turned to Warren, his voice calm despite the situation. He asked her to confirm their position and run a full sensor sweep of the surrounding area. The captain had learned long ago that panic was the enemy of clear thinking, and clear thinking was what they needed most right now. Warren nodded and began working at her console, her fingers dancing across the controls as she initiated a wide-range scan. The results appeared on the main screen within minutes, and the entire bridge fell silent. Warren's voice was barely above a whisper as she reported what the sensors had detected. There were dozens of ships in the surrounding space, but they were unlike anything in human databases. The vessel showed energy signatures and hull compositions that defied human understanding of spacecraft design. Blake stepped closer to his tactical display, studying the alien vessels with professional interest. The ships appeared to be engaged in some kind of battle, with energy weapons firing between 2 distinct groups. The weapons themselves seemed primitive compared to human technology, using simple plasma and particle beams that human shields could easily deflect. What caught his attention was the formation and tactics being used by both sides. Morrison ordered Warren to focus the sensors on the alien vessels, gathering as much information as possible about their technology and capabilities. The data that flowed across the screens was fascinating and concerning in equal measure. The alien ships were clearly the products of advanced civilizations, but their technology seemed to have developed along completely different paths than human science. The larger of the 2 fleets consisted of sleek, angular vessels with golden hulls that seemed to absorb and redirect energy. These ships moved in precise formations, their weapons firing in coordinated volleys that spoke of military discipline and long experience in combat. The smaller fleet used more organic-looking ships with flowing curves and bioluminescent patches along their hulls. Warren began analyzing the energy signatures from both fleets, comparing them to known physics principles. The alien weapons operated on similar principles to early human designs, but they seemed limited by their inability to manipulate gravity or adapt their energy frequencies in real time. It was like watching armies fight with muskets while carrying plasma rifles. Lieutenant Amy Carter, the ship's communications officer, suddenly spoke up from her station. She had been monitoring all frequencies for any signs of communication between the alien fleets, and she had detected something unexpected. The alien ships were using communication protocols that seemed almost familiar, as if they were based on mathematical principles that any intelligent species might discover. Morrison made the decision that would change everything. He ordered Carter to attempt contact with both alien fleets, using basic mathematical sequences and universal constants to establish communication. The captain knew that first contact protocols existed for exactly this situation. But those protocols assumed contact would happen in human space, not in the middle of an alien battle. Blake watched his tactical display as both alien fleets suddenly stopped firing. The Goliath had been detected, and the alien sensors were clearly struggling to understand what they were seeing. The human ship dwarfed even the largest alien vessels, and its energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. The alien ships began changing course, moving away from each other and toward the massive human vessel. Warren's voice cut through the tension on the bridge as she reported what the sensors were showing. Both alien fleets were powering up their weapons and shields, but they were not targeting each other anymore. Every weapon signature was now pointed directly at the Goliath. The two enemy fleets had apparently decided that the unknown human ship was a bigger threat than their previous enemy. Morrison felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders as he realized that humanity's first contact with alien life was about to become a battle. The Goliath could easily destroy both alien fleets without taking significant damage, but doing so would mark humanity as aggressors in galactic politics they didn't understand. The captain had to find a way to establish peaceful contact before the situation spiraled out of control. The alien ships continued to approach, their weapons charging and their formations shifting into attack patterns. Morrison could see the tactical display showing dozens of hostile contacts moving toward his ship, and he knew that in a few minutes he would have to make a choice that could determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The captain looked around his bridge at the crew who had trusted him to bring them home safely, and he began planning for the most important first contact in human history. Admiral Vextar stood on the command deck of his flagship, staring at the massive unknown vessel that had appeared in the middle of their battle. The Zenthari Empire had been fighting the Kalian Republic for control of this sector for over 30 years, but nothing in that time had prepared him for what he was seeing now. The alien ship was larger than any vessel in the Imperial fleet, and its energy signature showed power levels that should have been impossible to generate. Fleet Commander Nalthis watched the same vessel from her own bridge, her forearms moving across multiple control panels as she tried to understand what she was facing. The Kalian Republic had superior sensor technology compared to the Zenthari, but even her most advanced scanners could not penetrate the hull of the unknown ship. The vessel seemed to absorb and redirect their scanning beams, revealing nothing about its internal structure or crew. Both commanders reached the same conclusion, despite their years of hatred for each other. The massive ship had to be a secret weapon deployed by their enemy, a final desperate attempt to win the war that had consumed so many lives and resources. Vextar immediately sent encrypted messages to his fleet, ordering them to prepare for battle against what he believed was a new Kalian superweapon. Nalthis did the same, convinced that the Zenthari had somehow built this monster in secret. Lieutenant Amy Carter worked frantically at her communication station aboard the Goliath, trying to establish contact with the alien fleets. She had managed to decode basic elements of their communication protocols, but the mathematical principles behind their languages were unlike anything in human databases. Carter had studied xenolinguistics at the academy, but all her training had been theoretical, since humanity had never encountered alien life before. Captain Morrison watched the tactical display as both alien fleets began coordinating their movements, for the first time in decades. The irony was not lost on him that humanity's arrival had accomplished what years of diplomacy had failed to achieve, uniting two enemies against a common threat. Morrison ordered Carter to broadcast on all frequencies, using simple mathematical sequences and universal constants to show peaceful intent. Dr. Warren analyzed the incoming transmissions from both alien fleets, trying to understand their technology and intentions. The communication protocols were fascinating, showing evidence of civilizations that had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Their languages had evolved to include concepts and ideas that humanity had never encountered, making translation extremely difficult even with the ship's advanced computers. The first successful translation came through 30 minutes after the aliens had detected the Goliath. Carter's voice was tense as she reported that both fleets were demanding identification and stating territorial claims over the sector. The messages were aggressive and filled with warnings about trespassing in sovereign space, but they also contained underlying fear that the translation software could barely detect. Morrison decided to respond with a simple message explaining that they were explorers from a distant system who had arrived by accident. Carter worked with the translation protocol to convert the captain's words into mathematical concepts that the aliens might understand. But the nuances of human peaceful intent were nearly impossible to convey through pure mathematics. Commander Blake watched his sensors as the alien ships continued to maneuver into attack formations. The Xanthari vessels moved with military precision, forming tight defensive clusters around their larger ships while positioning their fastest vessels for hit-and-run attacks. The Kalian ships spread out in a loose formation that would allow them to attack from multiple angles while maintaining escape routes. The situation deteriorated rapidly when the first translation attempts were completed. Morrison's peaceful message about exploration and accident was interpreted by both alien fleets as territorial claims and threats of conquest. The word exploration translated into concepts related to scouting for invasion, while accident was understood as a deliberate deception designed to lower their guard. Engineer Chief Tony Rodriguez monitored the ship's defensive systems from his station in the engineering section. The Goliath's adaptive shielding was operating at minimal power, designed to deflect space debris and cosmic radiation rather than energy weapons. Rodriguez knew that the ship could withstand almost any attack the aliens might mount, but he was more concerned about the political implications of a battle. The breaking point came when a young Xanthari pilot named Kexvor decided to make a name for himself by being the first to engage the unknown vessel. Against direct orders from Admiral Vextar, the pilot fired a warning shot across the Goliath's bow using his ship's primary plasma cannon. The energy beam was designed to disable smaller vessels by overloading their power systems, but it had no effect whatsoever on the human ship. Carter reported that the alien weapon discharge had been detected, but the ship's computer had classified it as background radiation, rather than an attack. The Goliath's sensors were so advanced compared to alien technology that they didn't even recognize the plasma beam as a weapon. The adaptive shielding absorbed the energy automatically and converted it into additional power for the ship's systems. Morrison realized that the lack of response to the alien attack was being interpreted as either supreme confidence or complete contempt for their military capabilities. The captain could see on his tactical display that both alien fleets were now moving into full attack formations, their weapons charging and their shields at maximum power. The situation was spiraling out of control despite his attempts at peaceful communication. Admiral Vextar and Fleet Commander Nalthis found themselves in direct communication for the first time in years as they coordinated their joint attack against the massive human vessel. Decades of bitter warfare were set aside as they faced what they believed was an existential threat to both their civilizations. The two commanders agreed to divide their forces and attack from opposite sides, hoping to overwhelm the unknown ship's defenses. Morrison made the difficult decision to prepare for defensive action while continuing attempts at peaceful contact. He ordered Blake to ready the ship's defensive systems, but to avoid any action that could be interpreted as aggressive. The captain hoped that a demonstration of human defensive capabilities might convince the aliens to reconsider their attack while showing that the Goliath posed no threat to them. The stage was set for humanity's first battle with alien civilizations, a conflict that neither side wanted but seemed impossible to avoid. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew who trusted him to find a peaceful solution, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether humanity entered galactic society as friends or enemies. The combined alien fleet of over 200 ships launched their coordinated assault on the Goliath with everything they had. Energy beams, plasma cannons, and missile volleys streaked across space toward the massive human vessel in a display of firepower that would have destroyed entire planets. Captain Morrison watched the incoming barrage on his tactical display and felt the weight of history pressing down on him as he realized that humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Lieutenant Commander Kate Phillips sat at the weapons control station, her hands hovering over the firing controls as she waited for orders. The Goliath's weapon systems were charged and ready, capable of reducing both alien fleets to scrap metal within minutes. Phillips had trained for years to operate these systems, but she had never imagined using them against living beings rather than asteroid targets in training exercises. Morrison made the decision that would define humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. He ordered Phillips to activate only the defensive systems, specifically instructing her to disable rather than destroy the alien vessels. The captain understood that how humanity responded to this attack would determine whether they were seen as protectors or conquerors by whatever other civilizations might be watching. The first wave of Alien attacks struck the Goliath's adaptive shielding and simply vanished. The energy weapons were absorbed and converted into power for the ship's systems, while the physical projectiles were caught by gravity fields and redirected harmlessly into space. The alien crews watched in horror as their most powerful weapons had absolutely no effect on the human vessel. Phillips activated the point defense grid, a network of AI-controlled laser arrays designed to protect the ship from debris and small objects. The system had never been tested against actual weapons, but it performed flawlessly as thousands of precisely aimed laser beams reached out to intercept every missile and energy blast before they could reach the ship. The alien weapons were neutralized with surgical precision, creating spectacular explosions that lit up the darkness of space. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief as wave after wave of attacks simply disappeared before reaching their target. His flagship's most powerful plasma cannon, capable of melting through 3 meters of battle steel, had been stopped by what appeared to be empty space around the human vessel. The Xanthari admiral realized that his fleet was fighting something completely beyond their understanding. Fleet Commander Nalthis was having similar thoughts as she watched her ion cannons fail to even scratch the unknown ship's hull. The Kalian Republic had developed their weapons over thousands of years of warfare, constantly improving their designs to penetrate enemy defenses. Nothing in their experience had prepared them for technology that could simply ignore their attacks entirely. Dr. Warren suggested to Morrison that they demonstrate human gravity manipulation technology as a non-lethal show of force. The captain approved the plan, hoping that a display of their true capabilities might convince the aliens to stop their attack and attempt communication instead. Warren began working with the ship's gravity generators to create localized distortions in space around the alien fleets. The effect was immediate and devastating to alien morale. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly found themselves pulled out of position by invisible forces. The Goliath generated gravity wells that moved the alien vessels like toys, demonstrating control over fundamental forces that the aliens thought only existed near black holes or neutron stars. Commander Blake monitored the aliens' communications as panic spread through both fleets. The translation software was finally beginning to work properly, and Blake could hear the fear and confusion in the alien voices as they tried to understand what was happening to them. Words like impossible and gods began appearing in the translations with increasing frequency. Tony Rodriguez reported from engineering that the ship's power levels were actually increasing due to the absorbed energy from alien weapons. The adaptive systems were working so efficiently that they were generating more power than the ship was using, despite operating the gravity manipulators and point defense systems simultaneously. Rodriguez had never seen the ship's systems perform so far above their design specifications. The alien attacks continued for another 20 minutes, but with decreasing intensity, as both fleets began to realize the futility of their efforts. Ship after ship ceased firing as their crews understood that they were not fighting an enemy they could defeat through conventional means. The silence that followed was broken only by the electromagnetic signatures of alien ships trying to retreat from the gravity. Wells' emergency broadcasts began transmitting from both alien fleets on all available frequencies. The messages were desperate pleas for help and warnings about the impossible technology they had encountered. Within hours, news of the battle was spreading across galactic communication networks, reaching civilizations hundreds of light-years away. On the distant world of Hegemony Prime, Chancellor Mordain received the first fragmentary reports of the encounter. The messages seemed impossible, describing a single ship that had defeated combined fleets without firing a shot in anger. Mordain had seen enough warfare to know that such reports were usually exaggerated, but the sensor logs and testimony from hundreds of witnesses made the accounts impossible to dismiss. General Vosek of the Stellar Dominion was reviewing similar reports in his command center, studying tactical analyses that made no sense according to known physics. The gravity manipulation alone suggested technology that was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. Vosek immediately began drafting orders to recall all Dominion fleets to defensive positions around their home worlds. Morrison finally ordered the release of all alien ships from the gravity wells, allowing them to retreat to a safe distance. The captain then authorized Carter to broadcast a message on all frequencies, offering medical assistance to any ships that had been damaged during the encounter. The offer was made in the mathematical language that both alien civilizations could understand, emphasizing humanity's desire for peaceful contact. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Reports of the battle spread across the galaxy within days, carried by traders, diplomats, and military observers who had monitored the engagement through long-range sensors. Every major civilization received detailed accounts of humanity's display of power, and the implications sent shockwaves through galactic society. The galaxy that had been divided by countless wars and territorial disputes suddenly found itself united by a single emotion that transcended all previous conflicts. For the first time in recorded history, every major power agreed on something, and that agreement was fear of what humanity might do next. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within 72 hours of receiving the first reports from the Kepler sector. Representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered in the ancient meeting chamber on Nexus Station, their voices filling the hall with urgent discussions in hundreds of different languages. The universal translators worked overtime as species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves sitting together, united by their shared fear of the unknown human threat. Chancellor Mordain of the Hegemony stood at the central podium, his normally aggressive demeanor replaced by barely concealed anxiety. For 300 years, the Hegemony had been the dominant military power in the galaxy, their fleets capable of conquering entire star systems within weeks. Now Mordain found himself advocating for defensive preparations against a single ship that had effortlessly defeated forces larger than anything the Hegemony could deploy. General Vosek presented the tactical analysis that his best strategists had prepared over the past 3 days. The holographic display showed the recorded engagement, with computer models attempting to explain how human technology had achieved the impossible. Every simulation failed to account for the gravity manipulation capabilities, suggesting that human science operated on principles that galactic civilization had never discovered. Dr. Yilnara, the galaxy's foremost expert on gravitic physics, stood before the assembled representatives with data that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. Her analysis of the human ship's capabilities suggested that they had somehow learned to manipulate fundamental forces that other civilizations could barely detect, let alone control. The implications went far beyond military applications, touching on energy generation, space travel, and even the nature of reality itself. On distant worlds, the news of humanity's demonstration sent shockwaves through civilian populations that had never known fear of external threats. The Xanthari Empire, which had prided itself on military supremacy for over 1,000 years, saw massive protests as citizens demanded to know how their government had failed to prepare for such a threat. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds as people realized that their ancient civilizations might be helpless against this new power. Trade routes that had operated for millennia were abandoned overnight, as merchant vessels refused to venture into open space. The galactic economy, built on the free movement of goods between star systems, began to collapse as fear paralyzed commerce. Shipyards that had been building exploration vessels quickly retooled to produce defensive platforms and early warning systems. Meanwhile, on Earth, Director Helen Barnes sat in the Emergency Command Center, deep beneath the United Earth Space Command headquarters. The fragmentary reports from Captain Morrison had arrived through quantum communication channels, describing humanity's accidental first contact with galactic civilization. Barnes realized that Earth's location would not remain secret for long, and she immediately authorized the construction of additional Titan-class vessels. The production facilities in the asteroid belt worked around the clock as humanity prepared for whatever response their demonstration of power might provoke. Engineers who had spent years perfecting the Goliath systems now found themselves rushing to complete sister ships that might be needed to defend Earth itself. The irony was not lost on Barnes that humanity's most advanced exploration vessel had become their primary deterrent. Against galactic invasion, Captain Morrison received his orders through the same quantum channels that had carried news of the encounter to Earth. He was to remain in the Kepler sector and attempt to establish formal diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council, serving as humanity's first ambassador to alien civilization. Morrison understood the enormous responsibility that had been placed on his shoulders, knowing that his actions could determine whether humanity joined galactic society as equals or remained isolated in fear. Lieutenant Amy Carter worked tirelessly to improve the translation protocols, knowing that successful communication was humanity's best hope for peaceful contact. The mathematical basis of alien languages was becoming clearer, but the cultural context behind their words remained largely mysterious. Carter realized that true understanding would require more than just translating words. It would need to bridge the gap between completely different ways of thinking about the universe. Dr. Warren analyzed every scrap of data they had collected about galactic technology, looking for common ground that might serve as a foundation for cooperation. The alien ship showed evidence of scientific traditions that stretched back thousands of years, with each civilization developing unique solutions to universal problems. Warren began to understand that humanity's rapid technological advancement was seen as impossible by beings whose progress had taken millennia. The Galactic Council's response to Morrison's attempts at communication revealed the depth of their fear. Instead of the diplomatic protocols that normally governed first contact between civilizations, the Council sent military demands for humanity to withdraw from all inhabited systems and submit to galactic oversight. The messages carried the unmistakable tone of beings who believed they were negotiating with a superior force that could destroy them at will. Intelligence. Networks across the galaxy worked to gather any available information about human capabilities and intentions. Spy satellites were repositioned to observe the Kepler sector from maximum range, while deep space sensors were recalibrated to detect the unique energy signatures of human technology. Every major power wanted to know how many ships humanity possessed and where their home system might be located. The psychological impact of humanity's demonstration extended far beyond military considerations. Religious leaders across the galaxy struggled to explain how their ancient teachings had failed to predict the arrival of beings with godlike powers over gravity and energy. Some faiths declared humanity to be divine messengers, while others proclaimed them to be demons sent to test galactic civilization. Scientific academies that had spent centuries studying the fundamental laws of physics found their greatest theories challenged by technology that seemed to violate basic principles. Research programs were redirected toward understanding human capabilities, while theoretical physicists worked desperately to explain how gravity manipulation might be possible using known science. Morrison made the decision that would begin to change everything. Using the improved translation protocols that Carter had developed, he transmitted a simple message to the Galactic Council. The message contained complete technical specifications for basic human defensive systems, offered freely as a gesture of good faith and proof that humanity sought cooperation rather than domination. The transmission would take days to reach the council chambers, but Morrison hoped it would demonstrate that humans were willing to share their knowledge rather than hoard it as a weapon. 3 months had passed since the encounter in the Kepler sector, and the galaxy remained locked in a state of fearful preparation when Dr. Warren finally achieved the breakthrough that would change everything. Working with linguistic experts from Earth who had analyzed the cultural patterns hidden within alien communication, she developed a translation protocol that could convey not just words, but the emotional and cultural context behind them. For the first time, humans could truly communicate with galactic civilization. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Goliath as Warren demonstrated the new translation system by converting a simple human greeting into alien mathematical concepts. The result was remarkable, showing layers of meaning that previous attempts had completely missed. Where earlier translations had made human peaceful intentions sound like territorial threats, the new system could convey the genuine desire for friendship and cooperation that Morrison had been trying to express. Commander Beth Parker had arrived on the Goliath 2 weeks earlier aboard a fast courier ship from Earth, carrying official diplomatic credentials and instructions for establishing formal contact with alien governments. Parker had spent her career studying theoretical xenopolitics, but nothing in her training had prepared her for the reality of dealing with civilizations that viewed humanity as a potential threat to their very existence. The first successful diplomatic exchange occurred when Parker used the new translation protocol to speak directly with Admiral Vextar, who had remained in the Kepler sector. Despite orders from his government to withdraw, the Xanthari admiral had been studying the human ship from a respectful distance, trying to understand how beings with such advanced technology could show restraint in the face of unprovoked attack. Parker's message was simple, but profound in its implications. She explained that humanity had no knowledge of galactic civilization before their accidental arrival, that their advanced technology was developed for exploration and survival rather than conquest, and that they genuinely desired peaceful contact with their galactic neighbors. The translation system conveyed not just the words but the sincerity behind them, allowing Vextar to understand human intentions for the first time. The breakthrough came when Parker offered to demonstrate human good faith through actions rather than words. Following instructions that Morrison had received from Earth, she transmitted complete technical specifications for human adaptive shielding technology to both alien fleets. The gesture was unprecedented in galactic history, as no civilization had ever freely shared military technology with potential enemies. Dr. Carl Stevens, the ship's xenobiologist, established the first formal cultural exchange program with volunteers from both alien fleets. The initial meetings were conducted through holographic communication, allowing humans and aliens to interact safely while learning about each other's societies. Stevens was fascinated to discover that both alien civilizations had rich cultural traditions that stretched back thousands of years. The exchange program revealed the fundamental reason for the technological gap between humanity and galactic civilization. Earth's high-gravity environment and extreme weather conditions had forced humans to develop advanced materials and energy systems just to survive in space. What aliens saw as impossible technology was simply the result of humans adapting to a hostile homeworld that had shaped their entire approach to engineering. Fleet Commander Nalthus was the first alien leader to accept Parker's invitation to visit the Goliath in person. The Kalian commander arrived in a small shuttle, her forearms trembling slightly as she stepped aboard the massive human vessel. The tour that followed opened her eyes to technology that seemed like magic but was based on scientific principles that any civilization could learn, given enough time and resources. Morrison made the decision that would define humanity's entry into galactic society when he offered to share the basic principles of gravity manipulation with the Galactic Council. The captain understood that keeping such technology secret would only perpetuate fear and mistrust, while sharing it freely would demonstrate that humans viewed other species as equals rather than inferiors to be dominated. The response from the Galactic Council took weeks to arrive, but when it came, it marked the beginning of a new era in galactic history. The Council formally invited Captain Morrison to address their assembly, not as a conquered enemy or threatening invader, but as the representative of a new member species that had much to offer galactic civilization. Engineer Chief Tony Rodriguez worked with alien technical specialists to establish the first joint research project between humans and galactic civilization. The focus was on improving space travel safety for all species, using human defensive technology to protect alien vessels from the dangers of deep space exploration. The collaboration revealed that humans and aliens could work together despite their vast technological differences. Lieutenant Amy Carter became the first human to master an alien language when she successfully learned to speak Zenthari without the aid of translation equipment. Her achievement opened the door for deeper cultural understanding, as nuances of meaning that were lost in translation could finally be preserved in direct communication between species. The transformation of galactic society was gradual but profound. Trade routes that had been abandoned in fear slowly reopened as human patrol ships offered protection against pirates and natural hazards. The advanced sensors and defensive capabilities of human vessels made space travel safer for everyone, leading to an unprecedented expansion of commerce and exploration. 6 months after first contact, Captain Morrison stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council in the ancient chamber on Nexus Station. His speech was brief but historic, formally establishing humanity as the newest member of galactic civilization. Morrison emphasized that humans came not as conquerors but as partners, eager to learn from older civilizations while sharing their own knowledge freely. The Goliath became humanity's first permanent embassy in galactic space, serving as both a diplomatic center and a research facility, where humans and aliens could work together on projects that benefited all species. Morrison retained command of the vessel, but added the title of ambassador to his responsibilities. Becoming the bridge between Earth and the galaxy, the fear that had once united the galaxy against humanity transformed into excitement about the possibilities that human partnership could bring. Advanced human technology promised solutions to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries, while human enthusiasm for exploration opened new frontiers that had been considered too dangerous to investigate. The story that began with accidental first contact and misunderstanding ended with humanity taking its place among the stars, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple demonstration that advanced technology coupled with peaceful intentions could benefit everyone. The galaxy that had once gone silent in fear now buzzed with anticipation for a future where humans and aliens would explore the universe together,